All right, good afternoon, everybody. We understand that this is a day of deep mourning for the city of Washington, D.C. You know, foreign policy and security and all is one thing, but losing to the Giants, for heaven's sakes, is really bad. But despite that, we are going to press on with our program today, and we just have a wonderful speaker to set off what I hope will be a discussion. And looking around the room, I know this is going to be a lively question and answer period. But Keizo Takemi is what I would call one of the preeminent health diplomats of not only his country but of the world. Deep experience in the Japan government, both in the legislative and in the executive branches. A lot of work with the United Nations and other international health organizations, and presently helping to direct one of the preeminent public-private organizations, which is trying to tackle the various huge problems in international health that afflict so many countries. I'm sure he'll be happy to talk about that work, but what we've asked him to talk about this afternoon is the Abe administration's foreign policy. I think most Americans have a general impression of a lot of activity in Japanese foreign policy these days, led by the Prime Minister. But when you really look at the extraordinary thought and activity that Japan is now exhibiting across a wide range of security and policy fronts, it's truly amazing. So, Mr. Takemi, if you would favor us with your remarks, and then we'll take questions and discussion afterwards.
Thank you very much, Admiral Breyer. The very kind introduction for myself. And I'm really delighted to have this wonderful occasion to talk about the Prime Minister Abe's very challenging diplomacy. I have delivered some of the resumes on the table, so you can look at the resume as well. He's one of the most active, the global leaders, and visited so many countries. Within 20 months, he visited at least 59 countries, and 24 times he went outside of Japan. And 7 of the 57 the countries he visited is the first Japanese Prime Minister's visit. Here's one of the frequent flyer, if he has the mileage points. But the important thing is that the reason why the Prime Minister Abe can do it, because he has a very stable political basis in both houses and also in LDP. 1 month ago, he quite successfully reshuffled his cabinet members and stabilized his own basis within the intra-party politics of the LDP. And then he can take a much more strong leadership for any kind of the decision making within the foreseeable future. And also, he has a very comprehensive security framework which can cope with different dimensions of the power politics. The first dimension of the power politics is 20th century type, the geopolitical politics. As you can see that emerging the superpower of China is the dominant factor in Asia. and military buildup, which enable the China to deliver their own naval forces far from their own continent. And even the Air Force, they now has deployed the most sophisticated air fighters jets are now deployed along the bases of the coastal lines. And then the military buildup of China will gradually change the military balance in the region. And then the leadership of China, Chairman Xi Jinping, he quite successfully established his own leadership within the party. But still there are several uncertainties. For example, that the China's fighters jet access to the US reconnaissance military aircraft, and also access to the Japanese reconnaissance aircraft is quite happened. Is that the real order of the top decision makers? We are not sure. And also when the China welcomed the President of India, those are the military soldiers who stations along the disputed area violated those of the very sensitive places and had the battles when they both welcomed the President of the India at that time. Why this sort of things happened in China? The Xi Jinping, even though established his own strong leadership, but he can control the whole operations of the military establishment or not. That sort of things is a very sensitive issues for the Japanese, the security issues, especially in East China Sea. And now it is quite clear that China wants to change the status quo by force in the South and East China Seas. How Japan can cope with the new situations. And also we would like to invite your attention on the second dimensions of the new soft power politics. Because of the increasing the global common agendas, energy crisis, climate change, environment degradations, the global health, even the demographic change such as aging in Asia as a common agendas beyond the national boundaries. Now we can see the country which has comparative advantage focusing on some certain agendas can take the initiative to resolve the issues and increase its own influence in the global politics. At the 21st century type of the soft power politics, the country which can accumulate these initiatives in a global common agenda can increase its new type of influences in the global politics as well. This is the soft power politics. The Prime Minister Abe knows it quite well, and then have a very comprehensive framework to cope with those two different types of the dimensions of the power politics. And now, the cases of Japan-US collaborations are quite increasing in this soft power politics as well. For example, in the global health areas, Ebola became a very serious threat beyond the national boundaries. US government have already decided to dispatch those are the military forces which has a function to establish the field hospitals and deliver the services to contain the Ebola patients there. I really hope that in the future, we, Japan, including self-defense forces, can collaborate with the US forces to cope with those increasing infectious threat beyond the national boundaries. The new initiatives based on the Japan-US collaboration can be very beneficial for the global peace and prosperity. And now, the Abe cabinet are ready to face two different dimensions of our politics as a responsible player. But the first priority is given for the Japan's economic recovery ourselves. This is decisively important. But while we try to do our best to recover our economy through the so-called Abenomics, we also have to keep the balance sheet of the budgeting as well. This is a very serious subject. By the end of this year, Prime Minister Abe have to decide whether we increase our consumption tax from 8% to 10%. We are very carefully watching what will be the negative outcome of these decisions for the Japanese economy. But now the Prime Minister always mentions that now they carefully listen those are the economical experts, the discussions and the analysis and proposal. And final decision will be made by himself by the end of this year. And then another important priority is to establish the free trade partnerships such as TPP in Asia and the Pacific. Japan-US collaboration is, of course, it's a basis of this TPP success. I hope that the negotiation is now entering into the final phase of the negotiation. Unfortunately, at the recent talk between the Prime Minister Abe and the Vice President Biden, confirmed the reaching the goal through the mutual efforts. I do hope these efforts can realize the real outcome of the negotiation within the future. But I'm not sure what happened to your very important midterm elections, and we are carefully watching how the US politics is coming out and respond to the decision at the final phase. Especially TPA is very important for the Japanese point of view. Even though negotiation itself successfully conclude, but the president has not the real authority to implement it, it doesn't make any sense. Therefore, I do hope the US, the parliament, will accept the TPA for TPA before or after, I don't know, in the middle term elections in the near future. And now, the Abe, Prime Minister Abe now quite often mentions that we have to strengthen our deterrence power. And the strengthening Japan-US alliance was visualized by the President Obama's state visit in May. And joint statement, which include the application of Article 5 of the Japan-US Security Treaty on Senkaku Island. Also, I would like to mention that the very important cabinet decision on July 1st in terms of the collective security. I can show that at least the 3 points of the new condition for use of force as a measure of self-defense. The first point is when an armed attack against Japan occurs, or when an armed attack against a foreign country that is in a close relationship with Japan occurs, and as a result, it threatens the Japanese survival and poses a clear danger to the fundamentally overturn the people's right to life, liberty, and pursuit of the happiness. And second point is when there is no other appropriate means available to repel the attack and ensure Japan's survival and protect its people. And third is the use of force limited to the minimum extent necessary. You do now understand, even though this is the revision of the interpretation of the Article 9, but simultaneously we carefully and rigidly keep our basic position to protect our peaceful spirit endorsed by the Article 9. This is a very important balance between the original, the scheme of the Article 9, which has the very important peaceful spirit, and the revisions, which can give us the flexible alternatives to protect our own country. And now, the Japan-US Defense Guideline will be revised by the end of this year. Midterm report is publicized on October 8th, so maybe today, in which I do realize that the purpose of the Japan-US, the joint operation, is not only for very narrow-sighted means, but also for the global peace and stability and prosperity. Therefore, the new kind of the humanitarian disasters like infectious diseases are also one of the objectives of our new guideline, I think. And then way forward for development, the domestic legislation. This is a real difficult process we have to carry out. When the cabinet decision was made in July 1st, of course that the opinion research was conducted by so many newspapers. Unfortunately, 35% approved the Prime Minister Abe's decisions. More than 50% are disapproved. But even though those who disapproved his decisions support and approve the Japanese defense forces to protect the US military vessels which is under attack. So still the ordinary people has not enough knowledge and the real understanding of this revision itself. So we have to take time to carefully and precisely persuade our people to understand what the new implementation means. This is one of the reasons why we are proposing and we are submitting the draft legislation to the Diet for its the deliberation after April 2015. Without such a domestic framework, we cannot, implement the operation and activities based on the framework itself. And now, I also mentions that we have to revise plenty of acts and laws, such as law to ensure the security for situation in areas surrounding Japan, the ship inspections operation law, and the Armed Attack Situation and Response Act, and of course Self-Defense Force law, and U.S. Military Actions Related Measures Act, so many others. So if we are talking separately in a diet, it is impossible to complete the whole process within a future. I do realize that we have to create a kind of a policy package, act, in which we can cover the different type of the acts and laws devisement. But now we are carefully designing how to do that by the April next year. Now, I would like to invite your attention on the different dimensions of the soft power politics. The Prime Minister Abe quite often mentioned proactive contribution to peace, which consists of two different approaches. One is a proactive contribution to international efforts for peace and the stability of global community, which has the 5 points, at least. One is to strengthen diplomacy at the United Nations. We try to realize the Security Council's reform itself. And second is to strengthen the rule of law, strengthen the rule of law in the global commons. And third is to lead the international efforts on disarmament and non-proliferation. And fourth is to promote international peace cooperation. This means the contribution to UN peacekeeping operation. And the fifth is to promote international cooperation against international terrorism, such as the Islamic State. And second approach is to strengthen the cooperation based on the universal values to resolve the global common agendas. The sharing universal values is decisively important. Realization of a society in which all the women shine. The Prime Minister Abe is so keen about how Japan can contribute for the women's, the gender's issues in this global community, such as the reproductive health and rights issues. And responding to the global development and global issues and realizing human security, the strategic use of ODA, humanitarian assistance, emergency relief, and MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, and post-2015 development agendas are all very serious concern for the Prime Minister's new soft power politics diplomacy. And also, we try to maintain the free trade system as possible as we can. As I mentioned, promoting economic partnerships such as TPP is decisively important. But the purpose of the TPP is not only for those of the economical context, but also strategically. The TPP framework is decisively important to stabilize the Asia and the Pacific as a whole. Active U.S. economic presence in Asia and the Pacific is a Japanese very important interest. Without such sort of economic endorsement, how the United States of America can keep their own effective military presence there and have a real confidence on it. That's the reason why we realized the aspect of the strategy for the TPP as well. And now, the commitment on the global health is also very important. This is my favorite subject. And the achieving universal health coverage as a key concept for the post-2015. Fortunately, Japan has already achieved universal health coverage in 1961. 2011 was the 15th anniversary of our universal health coverage. And then we enjoy having the highest part of the life expectancy and not only a life expectancy, but also the healthy life expectancies. The Japanese male and female is a top among the peoples on this global community. I do hope that those experiences of ourselves has a comparative advantage, for we would like to mobilize those our own resources and the measures, not only for the domestic purpose, but also for global purpose in collaboration with the United States of America. So in this century, there are so many subjects we can share, and there are so many large potentialities we are sharing to consolidate our collaboration. The purpose is not only for the geopolitical politics. The purpose is also for the global communities as a whole, and create really the stable peace and prosperity in this global community should be the goal of our Japan-US alliance. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you very much. Takemi-san, I think I have to turn this thing on, and you have to turn yours on also. Let's see, is that coming out the loudspeakers or not? Switch the other way. How about that? There we go. So, well, thank you very much, Takemi-san. We are contributing to the improving the health of those of you who attended by delaying your main course for a while here. We don't want you eating too fast or too much, and we hope to raise the American longevity over the years by techniques like this, which we are pioneering here at Sasakawa. But let me, I want to turn this into a discussion, but let me give people time to think a little bit by asking you the first question that Takemi-san. In the United States, we have a public that the United States having been heavily involved in some major military actions overseas for the last 10 years. The results don't seem as successful as we would have hoped. There's a certain sentiment within the United States that maybe we've done enough or enough of that kind of activity overseas, and it's politically popular to draw back in terms of American overseas engagement. Now that's very variable, and with the events in Syria, we see the United States going back with military force. And but in Japan, we have a situation in which a government wants to have Japan become more involved globally, soft power, hard power, across the board, and yet the Japanese public seems somewhat reluctant. You yourself cited the minority support for even simple things like the reinterpretation of the collective self-defense and so on. So is Prime Minister Abe simply spending political capital that he accumulates in other areas against a prevailing opinion in Japan that would just as soon not become more active? Or will there be a time when the Japanese population will believe that this is a good thing for Japan, and so Prime Minister Abe's moves will not be sort of politically difficult, but will be reflecting Japanese opinion? Is there some sort of a change there that we can anticipate in the future?
I do realize. Can you hear you? Can you hear me now?
Try the other position.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. As you know, that the Prime Minister Abe, even though the 20 months already passed, enjoyed a very high rate of the approval rates through the opinion research, more than 40%. The more than 40% is a very high for the Japanese prime ministers in comparison with the other the former prime ministers, the approval rates. And then his challenge to revitalize the Japanese economy through the Abenomics receives very high popularity among the ordinary people. But on the other hand, unfortunately, not yet is the great challenge to revise the interpretation of the Article 9 is not yet understood by the ordinary people yet. That's the reason why we, as a majority party, we try to persuade our own people to understand what does it mean. And while we emphasize that we keep very important the basic framework of the Article 9 for the peaceful spirit as a key for this revisement as well. In addition to that, as the Admiral Blair mentions, that we have a strong confidence on the U.S. role as a kind of the global policeman to keep the peace and prosperity all over the world. It is quite unfortunate things that several frustrations happened in the Middle East, like Syria, and the emerging of the Islamic states. It's a real serious issues we do realize as well. But I hope that the United States of America consistently take this very important role as a real peacemaker to stabilize this confusing the global community in all over the world. And Japan, and especially Prime Minister Abe, are ready to collaborate with you to stabilize the situation in this global community, and also collaborate with you to overcome those emerging common agenda beyond the national boundaries. Therefore, I do hope that the challenge can be really create the good harmonies and the framework of the Japan-US security framework.
Mm-hmm. Thanks very much. Do we have any questions of those of you who've gotten the first bite, or I can keep on talking with Kemi-san if we want to. So no hands quite yet. So Mindy, be right with you. Well, no, there she is. Mindy, go ahead.
Down? Oh, sorry. Hi. My name is Mindy Cutler. I direct a nonprofit that studies Japan called Asia Policy Point. I read in the Sankei this week that there will be legislation, most likely in the Diet, regarding the Kono statement, making the Diet issuing its own statement, a revision of the statement. Would that be a bill or a resolution? How would that work, and when do you expect that to happen?
Oh, that absolutely bill, I think. That we are complete the whole process to draft the U.S.-Japan, the joint guidelines, defense guidelines by the end of this year. And then, reflecting from the guidelines, we are prepared for the domestic legislation, especially focus on the related acts and laws. As I mentioned, plenty of the laws and acts are related to this revisement. And then we have to prepare for the new legal framework, and then on which we can carry out our own conduct to implement the military operations and several other new challenges for the global common agendas.
I think Ms. Cutler was actually asking about a separate subject, which is all of the reconsideration of the Kono statement about comfort women.
Is the subject. You mentioned about those things.
The Sankei said there will be Diet legislation.
Oh.
The Sankei said there will be Diet legislation to issue its own a new Kono statement that won't be called, obviously, the Kono statement?
Within a foreseeable future, I don't think the new, the challenge to do something for it has happened. I don't think so. And the government position is really very clear. The Prime Minister Abe so frequently mentions, he has not any willingness to revise or change the Kono statement and former Prime Minister's statement as well. So I don't think that, as far as the LDP is concerned, we are the challenging to revise those of the government positions.
Okay. So. Thanks. Yes, sir. Can we get a microphone over here, please? And again, if you please mention your name and organization as you ask the question.
Thank you very much. I'm Ben Self. I'm an adjunct fellow at CSIS, Japan Chair. Takemi-sensei, when you were State Secretary for Foreign Affairs, you reached out a lot to the Chinese. Now, you mentioned the difficulties you're having with the Chinese and their aggressive posture in the East and South China Seas. But at the same time, it's critical that Japan show a friendly face towards the Chinese nation.
Of course.
Even as you're having difficulties with aspects particularly of the PLA, if not the whole country. And you've led in this area. I'm wondering what your expectations are for what Prime Minister Abe may be able to achieve at the APEC summit in November in terms of a gesture towards the Chinese state and people of friendship from Japan. Thank you.
That's a very important point. I forgot to talk about my presentation. The coming very important, the effort for the Prime Minister Abe is to strengthen the stabilized relationships with the neighboring countries, not only China but also Korea. Fortunately, in the recent 1 month, the foreign ministers' meetings took place twice, both China and Korea. It's a kind of a sign to prepare for the next more higher level of the talks between us. And Prime Minister Abe so frequently mentions his very strong willingness to talk with the Chairman Xi Jinping at the coming APEC meeting in November 10th or 11th in Beijing. I do hope that we are having the meeting with the Chairman Xi Jinping without any specified precondition. And in addition to that, another important subject is to collaborate with the Russia as well. We would like to resolve the Northern Territory issues with Russia. This is a remaining very serious historical subject, as you know. Before the Sochi Olympic, the Prime Minister Abe had the very collaborative, the wonderful relationships with the President Putin. But the really unfortunate thing is that the Russians' invasion to Crimea and Ukraine has happened at that time. And the environment is totally changed, and so it's not easy for Japan alone to keep such sort of a collaboration with Russia. But under such circumstances, the personal mutual trust each other between the Prime Minister Abe and President Putin is also very important. Therefore, yesterday, maybe it was the President Putin's birthday, and the Prime Minister Abe had a telephone talk with the President Putin. It was a 10-minute talk, so I don't know what they talked about. But when 1 month ago, it was the birthday of the Prime Minister Abe, he received the telephone call from the President Putin at that time, and had a bit longer time they talked. At that time, the Prime Minister Abe proposed to have a talk with President Putin at the APEC meeting in Beijing. So the coming APEC meeting is a decisively important occasion to create the real turning point with the neighboring countries to re-stabilize our collaborative relationships with each other. We have to do all our best to do that and realize the summit meetings with the neighboring countries, Korea, China, and also Russia.
I think those of us who've been in government a while, and there's some diplomats in the room who know more than I do about this, realize that a summit meeting is just the tip of an iceberg, and what really goes on beneath the surface in terms of preparation, follow-up, and so on is the hard work. But I do think it's extraordinary that this series of meetings of Asian leaders that's coming up here over the next, say, 6 months or so is going to, I think, really drive a lot of intense consultation on these animosities that have dominated the relationships between Korea, Japan, China, Russia, and others. So it's going to be very interesting to see if the hardworking diplomats can get things lined up so that there can be meetings of leaders here at these summits in which they are smiling for the camera and shaking hands afterwards, and or they're being told by their handlers to keep a stern face and keep your hands to yourself. But I think there's certainly I think there's opportunities there to move forward on some of these issues that have
I do hope so, but the important thing is what they can talk at the coming summit meeting if it is take place in Beijing. If we can make it a real turning point for our mutual relationships, the meat of the discussion is decisively important. But now I'm not a part of the government, so I don't know that what they are preparing for.
Right. And I guess my only other advice is you have to be careful about your conversations with President Putin. That's what we've learned at any rate. So, do we have other questions here? Oh, yes, sir. Sora, do we have can we bring a microphone over here, please?
Thank you. I'm Kevin Mayer with NMB Consulting. I had a question on the security side. The Abe administration's accomplishments in almost 2 years are very remarkable in terms of a very realistic approach in strengthening the alliance. But now that the collective self-defense policy is in place, how far is the LDP as a party in the Diet, as an institution, willing to support putting meat on the bones, as I like to put it? Now, you've got a very good defense policy in place now, but to respond to China, you really need to increase your capabilities. And it takes money, it takes a budget. But in terms of collective self-defense and the new defense guidelines, would the LDP and the Diet support going as far as in terms of integration with U.S. forces? Some people in Washington have talked about going as far as combined joint strike task forces between the self-defense forces and U.S. forces in Asia. Would you support that, and do you think the Diet would support that?
I think within our party, LDP, it's not difficult to build up such sort of a consensus to join the framework of the Japan-US alliance, as you just mentioned. And there are several peoples, of course, we have within the party. The LDP is a really large party. Some of them are really cautious to implement the Article 9 itself. But the majorities of our LDP parliamentarians has already the huge consensus on which we are supporting the Prime Minister Abe's decisions, not only for the new implementation of the Article 9, but also for the Japan-US defense guidelines. Therefore, we are now getting into the real new stage. Now, how we can realize those new guidelines based on the domestic legal framework. Therefore, how we can propose those legal framework to the Diet after the April 2015 is decisively important. There are no any uncertainties within LDP for it. We are really consolidated at this moment. Please don't worry about it.
I think one thing that's going to be different in the U.S.-Japan negotiations this time compared to previous ones that I've been involved in is that in the past, the United States was doing all the asking, and Japan was saying, yes, you can do this, no, we can't do that. With the new situation of the Senkaku's situation, I think Japan is also asking some things of the United States in return for the issues the United States will be concerned about having to do with the reinforcement of Korea in the case of a conflict on the Korean Peninsula and so on. So I think this time it will be a much more evenly balanced set of negotiations than the old model of just United States asked to use one more port or one more airfield or one more logistics facility. So I think that will be quite different in the negotiations this year, and I think that's a healthy development.
I do think so. We are picking up the several new cases under the new framework,
right.
And the Senkaku Island issues is of course one of them. I really appreciate that President Obama's statement in which he just mentions the Senkaku is, the places for the application of Article 5 of the Japan-US Security Treaty. But actually, the Senkaku Island is a very core and vital interest of national security, very much indeed. But for your position of the United States of America, Senkaku Island is not your vital interest. There are several perception gaps, honestly speaking. So when we talk about how we can cope with the expecting uncertainties related to the Senkaku Islands happened, how really we can collaborate each other and overcome the unfortunate the things in Senkaku Island in the future. This is a very, very practical but serious subject we have to seriously thinking. Therefore, the real subject are coming from now on. When we talk about the legal framework for, inevitably we are talking about each cases, how we can apply the new legal framework can be as a basis of the legal framework to carry out new mission under the security framework. So the real issues are coming out from now on, especially after the April. We are having very serious discussions in the Diet and try to persuade our people to understand what we try to do. So before the April, we are carefully, educate our own people to understand it. This is a very sensitive issue. It's a difficult thing is that how to understand the peaceful spirit of the Article 9.
Right.
While we try to revise our new implementation in order to widen our military alternatives to strengthen Japan-US alliance. How we can create the well-balanced framework in which our people can build up the consensus. This is the challenge
right.
we try to do.
I think when you're talking about these sorts of issues, and the changes that Japan is trying to make, the easy cases are really major aggression cases. Aggression by North Korea, aggression by China. I mean, people can understand how that's a threat, but part of Japan's plans are also to expand into this area of peacekeeping, and the area of peacekeeping now is the area in which actually most military casualties are taking place around the world, in which most hard fighting is really going on, in which grisly things like beheadings and so on are going on. Do you think the Japanese public is really ready for Japanese self-defense force troops to be involved in these messy, ugly situations which will result in casualties and so on?
It's a really good question. You know, that if we positively participate those the peacekeeping operations and also, you know, implement our missions under the new security framework, it may be the possible having those the casualty of our soldiers. But we have never had such sort of experiences after the World War II ended. How our own people respond to those the new situations, and whether our people can understand. You know, this is the part of the responsibility as a responsible nation in this global community. So this is the real new stage we are getting into. In addition to that, if the casualty is taking place for our self-defense soldiers, that the government has not, unfortunately, the official place to express the state appreciation and respectiveness to the soldiers who dedicated his life to our own country. We have a very small place in Ichigaya, the headquarters of the self-defense force, for those of the soldiers who lost their own life when some accident happened. But this is the totally different type of the symbol to express the state appreciation and respectiveness to the people.
Right.
If through the military battles and the peacekeeping operations, then how we build up the consensus among our own people to create the official framework to express the state appreciation to the soldiers and families. This is the decisively important, very essential part of our own country as an independent sovereign nation.
One thing that I have found when I have been involved in peacekeeping operations or have commanded peacekeeping operations is that the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who are involved feel very proud of what they're doing. They recognize that they are doing noble work, that they are giving people in other countries a chance to establish security and therefore build a better lives and have better ways for their children to live. So the problem is not with the soldiers and Marines and sailors themselves. They know it's important. They're happy to serve, and if it requires giving their lives, it's not something anybody likes, but it's understood. So how do you translate that understanding within the armed forces and into an understanding on the part of the people that this is part of being a responsible global citizen, which Japan wants to be?
Yes, this is absolutely new challenge for us as the global citizens, including those some part of the military role for the UN peacekeeping operations, and also several others for our common agenda as well. But I'm very pleased to hear that Admiral Blair has such a confidence on our self-defense for soldiers, very much indeed. And the mutual trust among the soldiers are very important and the basis of the real collaborations for the military operation.
No, Japan has a fine military tradition when Japanese leaders don't direct it at the wrong mission, when it's directed at the right mission. Wonderful wonderful, brave, and skilled soldiers and sailors. Any questions from others? Yeah, Rust.
Thank you. Russ Fleming at SICE. Takemi-san, thank you very much for a very interesting overview of Japanese foreign policy. My question is about Japan-Indian relations. As you mentioned, Japan-India. As you mentioned, Prime Minister Modi was in Tokyo recently. Prime Minister Abe has been to India. Is a common strategic vision developing between Japan and India, or is there still a very large gap between the way India and Japan sees the world and East Asia?
Oh, this is a very good question, and cannot respond clearly, because when the President of India made his visit to Japan, we publicized a joint statement in which we could make clear the word of the strategic partnership yet. If we can publicize the word of the strategic partnership, it's a symbol of the common framework in which we can collaborate with each other. So maybe it's taken more steps we have to have. But I'm quite sure that we are having those the more positive strategic framework between us, Japan and India, and create much more positive collaborations, not only for those are the only security issues, but for those are the economical collaboration as well. And then those are the relationship with India can be a very important pillar to stabilize the ASEAN and the Pacific as a whole. In this context, I hope that the United States of America will reconsolidate their own relationships with the India as well. And those are the major countries, the collaborations can be the basis for the multilateral framework on which we can stabilize the Asian and Pacific and invite China as a more responsible stakeholder.
Then, Takemi-san, let me ask a question about this relationship between the domestic and the national security strategies. You mentioned a number of elements of soft power that
yes,
the administration is developing. One of the traditional tools of Japanese diplomacy has been overseas direct assistance, ODA, very generous contributions to China and many other countries. But sometimes that aspect of Japanese policy has been called yen diplomacy. Just give people money, don't really do some of the hard tasks. I understand that this ODA and other forms of Japanese assistance is being reconsidered as part of.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about
yes,
where that's going?
Yes. This year, the Abe cabinet already revised our ODA charter and make it much more clearly that the ODA should be a tool of our more strategic purposes. And then we can mobilize those ODA resources, not only for humanitarian purposes, but for more strategic purposes. I can give you some example. We use the ODA to give the Coast Guard the ships to the Philippines and Vietnam. This is a very important, the new sign, how we utilize the ODA resources for the strategic purposes. I'm quite sure that those are the Coast Guard, the capacity building in the Vietnam and in the Philippines can be very beneficial to protect their own marine interest and stabilize the situations in the South China Sea. We try to do that. This is the quite new type of the application of ODA in recent years.
Okay, a question over here, sir.
Ira Wolf with Pharma. I have to ask a question about your favorite subject. This is a very security-focused audience, I guess, healthcare. So, as you know, I believe Japan has one of the best healthcare systems in the world, and you and several of your relatives are very responsible for that, so thank you. In addition to the global health issues that you discussed, what about promotion of the lessons learned domestically in Japan over the last 50 years about development of a healthcare system? And what are the ways to promote development or replicating, duplicating, copying the Japanese system around the rest of Asia?
Well,
and Bill reminds me, and maybe you can teach us in America how to develop a decent healthcare system as well. But right now, let's focus just on Asia. I think the American system may be beyond help.
Ian, thank you very much to talk about those the health-related issues in Asia as a whole. As you know that Japan is the most advanced aging society. And also aging is taking place all over the world, especially in Asia, in a very speedy manner. For example, in Vietnam, next year, the speedy aging is taking place. And then, the speed of aging is much speedier than the Japanese speed of the aging. Those means that they are having much more non-infectious diseases as a threat to death, which means they need much more stable health system which can deliver the most efficient services through the primary health care to the people who really in need. In this context, Japan has a wonderful knowledge and experiences how to design to achieve their own universal health coverage and how efficiently manage it as a sustainable, even under the aging. Those experiences can be very beneficial for those policymakers in Asia who are facing the similar situation under the aging. And maybe they are facing similar economic situations under the more lower economic growth. So the Japanese experiences is very beneficial, and Japan's new role is a very interesting new role as a most responsible, mature nation in Asia as a whole. And in addition to that, I would like to mention that the very interesting the story for the Prime Minister Abe's new challenge. His grandfather, Prime Minister Kishi, he served the Japan the end of 1950s. He is very famous as the Prime Minister who revised the Japan-US Security Treaty at that time. But he is also other face. He is the founding father of the Japanese social welfare system. In 1957, his cabinet proposed the very important health-related act, and also the Universal Pension Act. And also, he proposed to widen the purpose of the 10 years economic plan, not only for the economic growth, but also for the income doubling. And also, this cabinet decided to increase the proportionate progressive the income tax rate up to 75%. Those are all the package of the national policy to create healthy and well-educated middle-class society. Quite successfully, the Japanese cabinets, after the Kishi cabinet, continuously support this idea to create the healthy and middle-class society. And achieved the very healthy society as well, as I mentioned. But the original framework has already gone, lost the sustainability. And now that the Prime Minister Abe's destiny is to recreate sustainable new system on which we are creating another new Japanese society under the aging, which is quite clear. Economically active, healthy aging society is the new national target in 21st century. In order to do that, now the Prime Minister Abe are prepared to create the packages to create the sustainable social welfare system as a whole, and pay more attention on the healthy life expectancy rather than the life expectancy. The healthy life expectancy means that the longevity of the individual to live their own manner. They can, take the shoes or take the clothes by themselves and go to toilet by themselves, and they can eat by themselves. And those the longevities are called healthy life expectancy. Unfortunately, in Japan, in recent 1 decade, the extension of the life expectancy is less than 1 year. But the life expectancy extended more than 1.5 years. The gap between the life expectancy and the healthy life expectancies are increasing, which means under the aging, more the elderly population needs the health care services, elderly care services, and give the much more serious burden for the younger generation. And this is the vicious cycle of the aging itself. The Prime Minister Abe's challenge is how we can create the positive cycle under the aging, and how we can extend the healthy life expectancy while we try to contain the increasing gap between the life expectancy and the healthy life expectancy. And then, as far as those of the elderly population who enjoy having the longer healthy life expectancy should be given the occasion to work continuously and participate those social activities, and also accept some sort of incomes. If those elderly population can gain the income more than the 3 million Japanese yen, they don't need to receive any pension services. On the other hand, they become the persons who can premium for the pension system rather than receiving the pension services. And then we can create some sort of positive cycle even under the aging. The Prime Minister Abe tried to create this sort of new, the framework and packages of our national policies to create economically active, the healthy, the aging society. This is also, Prime Minister Abe's new challenge. So you can understand that how the Prime Minister Abe is sharing the historical role in the Japanese politics and the Japanese history. Not only are the security issues, those are the domestic issues like restructuring of our social welfare system is also another very important historical job of our Prime Minister Abe. But he has a wonderful and strong leadership to do that. I have a really confidence on him.
Well, thanks, Takemi-san. I'm going to finish this up with one very difficult question, but it's very much on the minds of Americans and others as they watch Japan, and no one in everybody in this group has been too polite to ask about it, so I thought I'd do that. But one of the objectives of Prime Minister Abe's security policies in the country are to restore a sense of patriotism among Japanese, to give them normal, healthy pride in their own countries. And yet, there's a fringe of nationalism which goes to extreme views, especially according to some data among younger Japanese, in which this worthy goal of healthy patriotism sort of goes over into an uglier anti-foreign sort of a sentiment. How can leaders of Japan guide Japan to achieve this worthy goal of patriotic pride in the country without having this extreme nationalistic element, which causes so much concern in neighboring countries and, frankly, even in allies like the United States?
But it is obvious that our younger generation has much more, the strong passion as a kind of a patriotistic sentiment. I can tell you one example, that my constituency is the Tokyo Metropolitan Constituency. And as the last day for the vote, the Prime Minister Abe joined my election campaign. It took place in Akihabara. Akihabara is a very famous place for the internet peoples. I was very surprised. More than 6,000 Japanese young guys are there, are gathering to join our campaign and sharing the Japanese flag and waving and support the Prime Minister Abe and the Vice Prime Minister Aso. But unfortunately, at that time, they did not mention my name. But huge passion is coming out from the younger generation as a conservative, group. This is the new trend. But I'm afraid that some of them is a kind of a fundamentalistic, the guys just, say about those hate speech.
Right.
How we can successfully educate our own younger people and exclude the negative, the fundamentalist from those other majority people, and create the real, consistent and moderate the nationalism is the big and good challenge for our Conservative Party LDP. We do know that. And now we are trying to propose the specified act against the hate speech in a Japanese diet. And maybe the act will be adopted within the near future. So this is the legal approach. But also our educational system is also very important as a basis to create the healthy and the modest patriotism among the ordinary people. So we have to do a lot of things, but we know what we should do.
Well, I certainly, after hearing you for the last few minutes, I certainly know you know what to do, Takemi-san, and we wish you the very best, and we're certainly glad that you came over to talk to us. So please join me in thanking Takemi-san for it.
Thank you very much.